Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Hello. Connection is unstable. Just wanted to hop in and see if people wanted to talk. So if you want to talk, let me know. I'll do my weightless workout while people join. If you do this long enough, it'll start to burn. Especially if you're weak people on the internet, like myself. Lots of weak people on the internet. I'm doing this one because I have a bad shoulder. If I try to do this rotating thing, my shoulder starts popping. And so I'm doing shoulder workouts that hopefully don't injure myself and hopefully make myself stronger. And I was told I could get like a can of beans in each hand eventually. Also known as baby weights. But yeah, there's a link if anybody wants to hop in and chat. We can change the name of this thing to chatting if someone wants to chat. Let's see. I have not been paying attention to this little corner. So maybe I can do that if nobody wants to hop in. Hey, Andrew. How are you? How's it going? Give me a moment. All right. Hello, Nathaniel. My cowboy hat is downstairs, or I'd toss it on. My cowboy hat, I bought it in 2008, I think, maybe 2007. I bought it in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, when I asked my wife to marry me. So, kind of, I guess it's a little bit sentimental. Such a weird word. Andrew is here. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. Just woke up. Threw something on.
That helps. Yeah, I put out a video, a couple in the last few weeks where I didn't have a shirt on, and then in the one I put out today, I apologize for not having a shirt on.
Showing people those gains.
I just don't. I know that for some people, different things can be distracting. So I didn't want to be distracting. How's life, man?
Good. Summer school is starting up. I think I'm getting a decent start on it. Yeah. How about you?
What's your most interesting course right in the summer?
Probably physics. I'm doing that and a engineering communications class. Communications class is important, but oftentimes boring.
Communications class.
Yeah.
I probably should have taken one of those, but did not. It was not required for me.
Did you have to do ethics or whatever?
I did an ethics class, yes.
Figures. Yeah. Yeah. It was either that or ethics for me, and I was like, man, I'd rather be running my mouth off all class than sitting there listening to philosophers or something.
Yeah, I ended up running my mouth in the ethics class, for sure.
Awesome.
But my wife was able to do it with me, so that was cool. It was the only class we took together. We got to get into the same ethics class. But she was in business and I was in engineering, so that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool for me. I think it worked out. So, what about your least interesting class?
Least interesting class that I've taken so far? Probably Calc 32A.
Calc 32A.
Yeah, it was pretty much just the multivariable integral calc.
Was it least interesting because you already knew it, or why was it least interesting?
It's just like the concepts are easy to get, but the questions are really tedious. Yeah, and the professor just graded horribly. Like,
it's crazy how the professors can shape your interest level.
Yeah, he just practically no partial credit in that class.
It's
insane. But hey, we got through it.
I remember like math classes seeming disconnected from how you would actually apply it in life or in like a real world problem. That's how math was for me. It seems more theoretical, which is it's like a puzzle, solving a Sudoku or something, but I don't know how practical it all was.
Oh, you're gonna see the dog.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. What's the name of this dog?
Bailey.
Bailey. Okay, I should remember that one.
Yeah, she's a cutie.
I had a Bailey.
Awesome. What breed?
I had a Beagle.
Ooh, all right.
A
Yeah.
Beagle. I was actually in that ethics class when my Beagle died. My Bailey.
Oh man.
Yeah. And then my wife and I were crying in an ethics class because our dog died.
Yeah. When I first got this guy, it was between a corgi and a beagle. Parents liked the corgi more because beagle did not. The beagle was a howler.
That's a cool way to store your bicycles up there.
Yeah. Um, it's such a great way that we never take him down.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a mess in my crawl space in my attic, and my wife is like, "We can organize it." And I'm like, "I know you can organize. Like, I know we could do that, but it's like, do we really want to do that? Just organize things um, that we may not use for years."
Yeah.
But
Oh.
a dog would do me well, Dust to Dust says.
We
I
gave her
think
this bone like 4 days ago, and she's been whittling it down.
cool. Yeah, don't choke on it, Bailey. Looks like Bailey enjoys that bone. I know Jacob's a fan of pets, especially if you're like by yourself.
Yeah.
You're not by yourself. You have roommates, or do you? What about during the summer? Do you still have roommates?
No, I'm back home with my parents.
You're home with your parents. I got you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
Oh.
be able to have a dog if you were in like a dorm or something.
Nah, afraid not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's this guy on CLA?
I lost you for just a second.
I miss this dog back when I'm back at UCLA. She's still unsure on whether she trusts me about the bone, so I'll be petting her, and sometimes she'll just stop. And if I
Yeah.
get too close, she'll like growl a little bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You got to be a little careful with that. I've seen some dogs fight over bones.
Yeah.
You ever watch Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I watched it a long time. I think he's still doing that stuff, but I watched him like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. That'd be the life.
Rehabilitate dogs and train people. That's what he would say.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was cool how he had like all the dogs and then he would bring a dog in to rehabilitate it by surrounding that dog with his healthy dogs. He would enculturate them.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what's been going on in the corner? Do you pay attention? I know last time you said you had been paying attention to Father Stephen.
Yep.
Do you still pay attention?
Mostly just Father Stephen stuff. I don't know much outside of it. Peterson's doing his Exodus seminar, which is.
Is that interesting to you, the Exodus seminar?
There's some speakers in there that I think are really good, like Ajo, and then Prager will occasionally bring in the Hebrew, and there's a couple other guys that I like their input on. But sometimes it just gets into like this is an allegory for tyranny.
An allegory for tyranny?
Yeah, that pops up a lot, and it gets kind of stale. But
Can
other
you
than
can,
that, it's
can
good.
you tell me more about this allegory for tyranny and why it's stale?
It's just like Peterson will get on a tangent about like the Soviet gulags and Solzhenitsyn and
Mhm.
all that other stuff. Um, and I mean, it's great. It's just like you watch Peterson too much. Uh, heard all his stories. Oh man.
Yeah, I get that. I get
Yeah,
that. So he says a lot of things you've heard before.
yeah, I think so.
And then I guess if you're in Exodus, it's talking about the Pharaoh
Yeah.
and with regard to tyranny.
hmm
Hmm. What do you think about the hardening of Pharaoh's heart? You know that part?
Um. Yeah. Yeah. People tend to think of that as like taking away of his free will. Um, Another interpretation is like strengthening his desire or whatever, you know. Um, and then Hesi pointed out one by Maimonides, where it's like God is keeping his heart still so that like he doesn't get angry and then you know attack the Hebrews or whatever. It's like he's preventing Pharaoh from becoming more evil by hardening his heart.
That's interesting.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. That would I could see that.
hmm
I wonder how much God hardens our hearts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I have a funny story. Um, so recently was the fast of Saint Mary, the Mother of God. Um, and so naturally, I'm not telling my parents that I'm gonna be at this church until like midnight or whatever. Um, so I'm like, yeah, I've got a group project with some friends for that communications class.
Uh oh. Uh
Yeah.
oh.
So, so my mom gives me make dinner so that I can eat while I'm over there, and so I find myself in the strange position of eating a dinner my mom made me while I'm supposed to be fasting for the Mother of God.
Mm-hmm. And that why couldn't you be honest with her?
It just opens a whole another can of worms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does she make you try to feel guilty about something?
Yeah.
Or do
Yeah.
you just feel guilty, or do you think she'd like that's the question. I've been thinking about guilt. It's like, because sometimes we can feel guilty and maybe the other person wasn't trying to make us feel guilty, but yeah, it seems like guilt might be in there is why you would want to keep a secret.
Mm.
But you don't have to confess these things on publicly on the internet. But yeah, if you ever wanted to talk about it outside the internet, we could talk about it as well.
Mm.
I found recently that by confessing about things that I've felt guilty about, I've received from others that they thought I should not feel guilty, and that
Mm.
was helpful for me.
Mm.
So sometimes it might work out that way. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they might say, yeah, you should feel a little guilty, but who knows? I don't, for me personally, like you're going to college, you are receiving help from your family, and you are interested in participating in this religion. And then there's there's some type of dynamic here where there's you have family who are influencing you, and yeah, so it can be complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you're eating this meal. Were you eating like before you left, or did you take it with you?
I took it with me.
You
So
took it
it's
with
pretty
you?
much like eating right outside the church.
Oh man, that's when you need to
Yeah.
donate the food. So here's your food. Donate it. Have you ever done a fast?
Yeah.
I was thinking about Jesus. So it's like, what if, and I guess anytime you start talking about Jesus, you risk offending people. if you're like, if you're unorthodox, if you say things that go against people's doctrine. So yeah, maybe I have to watch that. But I'm trying to imagine what it might be like for Jesus to be raised by parents telling him that he's the son of God. It'd be kind of awkward to be a child being raised that way. If you could imagine being in a situation where you're being told you're the son of God. Because don't you think like Mary and Joseph were telling Jesus this? Because like didn't he like poop his pants and he had a diaper and he kind of had an upbringing similar to the way humans have an upbringing.
Yep. I don't know.
Yeah.
He seemed to manage.
Yeah, he managed. Yeah, here's a dust to dust. I wonder if his parents told him. Well, I heard that Joseph was told to go and take care of Jesus, right? Joseph like received, some kind of message to do that. So, and there's something about honesty here. Like, do you tell your child? Do you tell people exactly what you experienced? And what do you like keep secret, and what do you lie about? I try not to lie. But I do have secrets.
Sometimes she'll stop eating her bone and get this real philosophical look in her.
What does she do?
She just gets this like philosophical look in her, She'll just stare off into the distance, like, why am I chewing this bone?
Could hear something that you don't hear.
Yeah.
What's your morning routine, Andrew? Do you have one?
Get up, walk the dog. Sometimes I wake up early like this and she's a little too tired to be walked. She's got to gnaw on this bottle a little bit. Wake up. And then what usually happens is that, like, she's too invested in the bone to start walking. You'll try putting the collar on her and she's just, like, still gnawing on that bone. Yeah. Yeah. She drives me crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's Dad. Dad's coming home.
She may have heard Dad 2 minutes ago with that philosophical look. Dust to Dust said, guilt, self-love, balance can be hard. So some people, yeah, you can go either way. Yeah, different people can be imbalanced in different directions. So like there's some things if you try to help someone, it might be the wrong advice for someone else. So like one person's medicine could be another person's poison. I had the thought that the church, who loves God, loves their neighbors, and loves their enemies, that they would not judge others and assign guilt to them. That would be the church. I had that thought this morning.
Wanna go for a walk? You got it. We'll see if she can get this guy out. Come on, get this guy. Come on, you can wait a little bit. You can wait a little bit. Come on. Okay, come on, buddy. Get this guy. Get this guy. Come on. Hey, okay. You got it. Hey, see what you had to do? I had to take her bone and then put it through the collar so that she lunges for the bone and puts her head through the collar.
Oh, you're doing the carrot. You know how there's a carrot or a stick? You're doing the carrot. Hey, Chad.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Would you take your dog on a walk while you're on call here?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've done it before.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah,
You gotta stand
I could
like
try
that.
walking.
Mm-hmm.
I could try walking and talking. When I go walking in my neighborhood, sometimes my neighbors will think that I'm like talking to them. So yeah, if I go walking, I get to see all the neighbors.
Yeah.
Hello, Dust to
Neighbors
Dust.
are these people. Oh. How's it going, man?
Hey.
Okay, you need to roll over.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Come on, man. I know you can do it. Dave. Okay.
How's life, Dust to Dust?
Okay.
One day at a time. For me, it's I've got so many little issues that I deal with, so mentally, but I've been sort of, I guess, concentrating on mindfulness and trying to be mindful of my emotions, what I'm thinking, guilt, and so on. I find that if I'm constantly feeling guilty, I'll kind of seize up and not really feel too well, like, or at least not be so self-aware, because that whole fear thing kind of shuts down emotions.
So the guilt is connected to some fear?
Yeah. At least that's the way it works for me personally. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I confessed some guilt with my wife a few days ago, and it ended up being good for me. I did it carefully, and it's been good. It's not something like I wouldn't. I was telling Andrew, I don't know if we should go around confessing our feelings of guilt publicly on the internet. You know, um, but yeah, it was good. I had a few people tell me when I expressed like what I felt guilty about. Um, inc- they had expressed that they didn't think that I should feel guilty.
Hmm.
I mean, my guilt was, it's not too bad. Like I could talk about it, but yeah, um, but they basically were like, I was being too hard on myself, um, which
which can be
some,
true. Yeah.
it can be true in some cases that you can be too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Um, I guess, and then if you, and then maybe sometimes you need help, right? Uh, to deal with the guilt. Sometimes you're not being too hard on yourself. You're on in the other direction, but maybe it's nice to have help with it.
Oh, for me, I kind of, I mean, I think everybody kind of has their own narrative. And if they feel like they're being true to whatever sort of narrative they're driving, they'll feel like there'll either be less guilt or more guilt concerning how they view themselves, how they view their social situation. So I find myself like I feel guilty because I feel guilty when I think I'm being like upsetting or something. I have, and it comes from the narcissism, I think. It's like I'm more concerned about what other people are thinking and feeling. And in that sense, that actually makes me so less self-aware that I'm most likely hurting this situation.
Well, I don't know if the word narcissism's right there, but I definitely have talked to people who care about what other people are thinking and feeling, and then they will end up neglecting themselves. And I know two people who have recommended the subtle art of not giving a fuck by Mark Manson, for people who are like that, who care about other people's feelings and thoughts and have to practice creating boundaries for themselves, um, things like that. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a medicine or a poison for you specifically, but I know two people who have had struggles with that who have benefited from that book.
Hmm.
I haven't started reading it. They both said that I would, it's a good book and it could help me understand other people and their needs and why they push boundaries, things like that. But so it's not, the title doesn't tell you exactly what's in the book.
I I keep on looking on YouTube. It's like YouTube is filled with people talking either about narcissism or autism or something. It's like mental disorders seem to be in my algorithms. I don't know why. It's like, what?
I've got a dash. Spend some time with the dog on the walk.
Okay, Andrew.
Yep.
All
It's
right.
good talking, yeah.
Enjoy the walk.
Yep. All right.
Take care.
Have a good one, fellas.
You too.
You too.
Chad says, I prefer the spirituality of imperfection. I'm guessing that's a book. I'm guessing. I could go look it up real quick. Spirituality of imperfection. I'm aware of the Alcoholics Anonymous. Let's see. Yeah, that's a book. The title rings bells for me, but yeah, Storytelling and the Search for Meaning, 1993, Ernest Kurtz, 4.7 stars, 1,644 ratings on Amazon. I am not perfect is a simple statement of profound truth, the first step toward understanding the human condition. For to deny your essential imperfection is to deny yourself and your own humanity. Let's see. For to deny your essential imperfection is to deny yourself and your own humanity. Okay, I get it. The spirituality of imperfection, steeped in the rich traditions of the Hebrew prophets and Greek thinkers, Buddhist sages, and Christian disciples, is a message as timeless as it is timely. This insightful work draws on the wisdom stories of the ages to provide an extraordinary wellspring of hope and inspiration to anyone thirsting for spiritual growth and guidance in these troubled times. I could keep going. There's another paragraph, but I think that gives you an idea. Hey, Tayo. And Nathaniel says it's a good book. Chad approved.
Yeah, I think I'll have to give that a look.
I feel like I've been going back to school. I've just been carrying around books upstairs and downstairs. Just kind of hopping between books based on, however I feel. And
I've been watching your videos here and there. So
cool. Yeah, I'm trying not to create stumbling blocks for anybody. That's like, it's a good start. I think I talked to Manuel, and he had pointed out, that when you're trying not to hurt people, you're not necessarily aiming for the good, and I think that's right. But man, it's a good start. If everyone went around trying not to hurt people, he's right. Like, you would be doing not good, and you would be doing not bad. But or that's the way I'm thinking about it. But man, that would be a good start. It's a good place to be able to go to. And I'm also listening to someone named DeMarco. I guess he was a Jesuit priest. No, it's DeMello, Anthony DeMello, Jesuit priest, and I think a psychotherapist. And yeah, he's been. I just started this one, but he's basically talking about how the kingdom of God is here, and joy is available. And then we've been programmed in ways which actually work against us experiencing joy. So, yeah, I think there's some things available to us as humans that we can learn so that we're, able to experience more joy and avoid harming ourselves and others. But then I think there's things beyond that as well. To Manuel's point, aiming at the good as well. Being able to
Well,
tap into that, it would be really powerful, though, to tap
well,
into just the basic foundation.
what was I think Paul Vanderklay had a sermon on Romans chapter 7, and he was talking about walking according to the Spirit versus walking according to the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you could say that for at least the Apostle Paul, he saw the flesh as being under the law, whereas the Spirit was more like the positive modes, like love, joy, patience, tenderness, long suffering. All. So if you think more like what, I guess you think of what needs to be done or at least if you think of love in a sort of positive sense, you're better off than trying to negate all the bad that we do, even though we should negate the bad that we do, but you know.
There's this, the voice of God or the Word of God, the Logos, and the Holy Spirit. Like for me, they're getting all wrapped up in one thing, in my mind. And then there's something like the idea that the Word of God is true. And so if God speaks to us through our hearts, we can learn to discern that voice based on whether or not it's true. And then sometimes our mind does things. So when you talked about Paul right there, you talked about the flesh and the spirit. And so there's a kind of a juxtaposition, this contrast between the flesh and the spirit. For me, you could use different language, but it could be the mind and the heart. It could be the Holy Spirit and the unholy spirits.
Yeah.
Things like that. But what comes from God is true. And you could look at the fruit in your own life and the fruit all around you and how you do fellowship with everyone else and try to discern what is not, of the Holy Spirit and what is. And that's something we can always get better at doing.
Well, that's a lifelong thing. I mean, it's not something I've been a Christian for a very long time, and I seem to hit my head in brick walls constantly. So I think it's not easy, but I think people hurt themselves when they get too wrapped up in juxtapositions. Yeah.
Hey, Tayo.
How you doing?
How you guys doing?
I've been practicing caring for people more, loving people more. That's what I'm doing.
I'm practicing chilling.
How have you been practicing loving people? What have you been doing?
Trying to understand the other person, where they're at, what they're feeling, what the worldview is, how they identify. Then I can hopefully avoid creating those stumbling blocks, communicate, encourage them and what they want for themselves. maybe help them see what they want for themselves, and practicing doing that without just like, yeah, without creating stumbling blocks. And there's so many ways to do that, to create stumbling blocks for people. So
It's easier to create stumbling blocks for people than it is to help someone see something they don't previously know. So you're taking on a huge task there.
well, I've been someone who doesn't care for people as much as I could, as much like I care for people more now than I have in the past. So, some of those first steps that you can say is a huge task, but just wanting to listen to people more, it's not that much to just try and get better at listening to people. So,
No, that's not nothing. That's actually that might be the cure for the mess we've got ourselves in as a culture. It's just the listening, especially listening to someone that doesn't speak the same language or read from the same hymn sheets as you. Someone
read from the same what?
Read from the same same book as you. Yeah, book works. That's something that's really lacking.
I noticed something I do in my head is I find that if we're trying to judge what someone else is saying, we can do that in a sort of looking down position or an authoritative position, or we can do it in a looking up position. And I find that when I'm in a looking up position, I'm more likely to be receptive and understanding. Whereas if I'm looking down, I have a lot less self-awareness. Yeah.
And by looking down, you mean being condescending towards the person you're being loving to, or
it's kind of like a judge not, thou shalt not be judged kind of thing. Yeah.
What if we try to look at each other eye to eye?
That's tough. But yeah, I mean,
we're not all the same height. That's why that's an issue.
Yeah.
We all have amazing potential. Like our potential is just immeasurable. Each one of our potential. And then your ability to see into my blind spots is like, how do you measure that? Like the things that you see that I can't see. How can I put a number on that?
I don't think you can. I think that's why the looking up is the right stance to be in. Because in that stance, we're all looking beyond ourselves.
I guess,
and being held accountable to something above ourselves.
Okay. I guess I was concerned about the look. I was concerned about the looking up to other people kind of thing.
No. It's past people. I presume so.
Yeah.
It's a process, trusting and not trusting. So,
yeah. There's an image of a person, of a cat looking in a mirror and seeing a lion, and there's like an opposite of a lion looking in a mirror and seeing a cat. And so that's the thing I was just wanting to make sure people are careful about. Like both of those, like you don't want to look down on other people, but I think there's some danger in also looking up to other people and imagining yourself as lesser than all these other people as well. Like, I think there's a danger in both of those. And so, be looking up to God and trying to make God the center or the top sounds good. I think that's what you were saying, Taya, right? But looking up to people as an authority and giving authority to other people is something to be careful about.
Was it Sir Arthur Conan Doyle? I think he talked about, he had Sherlock Holmes says, I do not count humility to be amidst one of the virtues. To a logician, things should be seen as exactly what they are. I wouldn't say that humility isn't a virtue, but I think that you can overstretch humility to where it doesn't, to where it's no longer virtuous. Yeah.
Can you give an example of how you can stretch it to that point?
By being too submissive towards an ideological head that you're blindsiding yourself. Yeah.
I don't know if I agree.
Well, I mean, think of the people who were surrounding Hitler. They humbled themselves to Hitler. Not a good thing.
That I agree with. But that is it. No, what I mean by that, I don't think that's the. I think if you're looking above, if the stance is you're looking up and not looking down. If you're looking down, then yes, all of those things that you say, you contribute. But if the stance is you're looking up, and in looking up, you're realizing just how tiny you are, and it's genuine, not like you put on a show. But in looking up, you come to the realization. Get up with VQ up in this bitch. The realization of just how tiny, how the speck of a dot. So if I think that's there's no depth to that sort of humility that you can just keep going deeper and deeper into. But if you're looking eye to eye or at other people and like being faking humility in front of persons, then yeah, I think you're right on that. So that was the only thing I disagreed. How you
This is
doing,
a
Chad?
good topic. Good, good. This is a good topic. I think sometimes it can be perceived as kind of like a fallacy to discuss humility. Like, well, like at least people who are seeking God will like, well, we can't define humility. It's like, well, that's probably true, but I think it would be a good thing to discuss more. What is humility and what is humble? And Dust, when you were, I'm just gonna call you Dust. What's your first name?
Matt.
Matt. So good to see you, by the way.
You too.
Like when we were discussing, you know, kind of people pleasing or like the being of service not necessarily being because I think being of service to others that is an act of humility and humbleness. It's when it becomes when we're kind of being servile. That's when it's not humble. Like because I think sometimes like there are two to take this into the conversation of like ego. There are two stances on the ego. There's the inflated ego that says like where I think I'm kind of above, and then there's this deflated ego where I'm kind of like think I'm lower than everybody else to the point um of expressing that everywhere I go. And that's almost, I think, like the self-loathing is almost worse than the inflated self, because the self-loathing person can easily hold hostages and start to kind of bring everybody else down. And it's kind of like this in this whatchamacallit, like a infectious thing. So I think I think my experience with humility is kind of like the way I can embody it best that I've found is showing up and suiting up and showing up and trying to be useful, whether I like it or not. Like because it's kind of like just the thing to do, right? Like, and usually it's like it's something I don't want to do. And so those actions are kind of that I can take that kind of get me right sized. And I think maybe that's what humility is about, is kind of being right sized. And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with looking up to people. I actually do this a lot. Um, there's a difference, I think, between looking up to somebody as an icon for a right action and trying to perhaps follow in their footsteps whilst seeking a power greater than myself, because they aren't going to be a power greater than me. But I do look up to other people and their actions. I need to know how to act. And so icons of action in the right direction are something I want to follow. And so yeah, that's my kind of thoughts on this stuff, because um,
Yeah, I think
I'm
you're
not sure.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure we get to be the ones to place ourselves on the hierarchy. This is the job of others, and this is why I think like Vanderklay won't step out and say I'm the leader, whereas everybody else here has probably said, well, he is clearly the leader. So it's, that's that. And that I think he would never say he's a humble man, but I would say by the actions I've seen him take, he's quite humble.
Mm.
He's not a perfect man, but I definitely would like to be more like that man than I am like me now, you know.
Same.
And
Yeah, there's. I think you dropped a lot of nuggets there. I'm trying to decide which one to pick up on. Uh, I think just going about looking up to people. I think that's a good one because that's as someone who grew up Protestant and the idea of saints was like blasphemous. The most of time I've spent in this little corner, the moment like, oh, they were like everyone else were the Orthodox and Catholics were right. Saints is not just it's the way reality presents itself, or the way we best relate to reality, is through the eyes of other people that we look up to. And I think Peterson explains this brilliantly about looking the way the kid's brain develops and looking up to their mom, looking up to their parents, and learning and absorbing and just I think we can't help but be like that. That's the human condition, and the trouble is you should we look up to. I've been consuming a lot of not Andrew Tate content, but a lot of commentary on Andrew Tate content, and the battle seems to be, this is not a saint for the kids. That's the argument being made from either this is the saint for the kid, someone the kid should look up to, or this is not someone the kid should look up to. And I think in a secular context, they wouldn't use the word saint, but I think it's pretty much the same thing um, that we're trying to figure out in this little corner.
I I think Gavin kind of pointed that out, and that is might be situational. It's like what's going to be poison for some is going to be medicine for others. Yeah.
right, well, I wouldn't look up to the drywaller to do my plumbing. I might look up to like certain aspects of his work ethic and how he talks with the customers and things like this, but like I wouldn't use like his particular skill set as like a basis for getting the skill set right in say tile setting or plumbing. But um so yeah, I mean, so like what are we looking for, right? I mean, I deal with a lot of the things that you're talking about, um Matt, right?
Hmm.
Like I deal with a lot of that stuff. I mean, I'll like I can be running like on like just that nice high where I feel like life is so good and I feel connected to God and I'm doing well with others, and then like the next morning wake up with like the most atrocious thoughts about myself and what I should do with my life later today, right? Like I should just go home and kill myself. Like those things cross my mind.
Hmm.
And what some wise men have taught me is that they said, Chad, you are not your thoughts, You are just the fool that listens to them. Well, it's like, yeah, because sometimes it's impossible to listen to. It's seemingly impossible to not listen to them.
Well, it's also something I've learned that you do have to practice. You have to practice positive thoughts. Was it cognitive behavioral therapy? There's this thing called neurologic linguistic programming, and I realize it. I think what is it? Griswold Grimm talks about it.
Well,
You know?
I would say that there's some truth to it,
Yeah,
but I think it cannot be just that. It must be fortified with embodiment. And the best way I know how to do this is if I want to practice positive thoughts. Um, I must like rigorously go out there and serve others. Otherwise, I'm never going to believe any of the thoughts running through my head.
yeah.
Now, I know that some people might say, well, you're saying do good, feel good. Kind of, but sometimes do good, feel good doesn't work either. So it's the constant action toward this, going out there and taking action in the face of how I feel. And that becomes more of the embodiment. It's like I know that the shit running through my ears is just shit sometimes.
Yeah.
It should never stop me from being of service to others. Um, because I found that that is the best way to embody what the kind of person that I would hope to be. You know,
Well,
because like I was talking to somebody else about this, like there's never enough of that to give away. You know.
I always separated myself. I've always separated myself into two, kind of like the Romans 7. You have the flesh and the spirit, and they battle against each other. And I think that you can kind of look at that as, us battling against our bad thoughts, and, versus the things that we're looking to do in order to live a loving life and a happy life. And it is something you have to practice, though, because your brain needs to constantly hear in order to reinforce. There has to be a sort of a catharsis for your brain to realize, and you need to be reminded that about your good thoughts. And that's why I think either some sort of positivity training or something does help. It does help. It sounds a little humbling, but it does help. It's gotten me out of deep depressions, suicidal depressions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, isn't that kind of what prayer is,
Yeah.
and perhaps meditation in search for God. Yeah, yeah. There's another book. It's called Conversations with God. Very powerful. Oh, I'll tell you this right now. So I'm about.
What happened, Chad?
Deep conversation.
He had to bail out there for a second. The
Yeah, I think it's lagging.
what did you say, Tom?
Oh, he said he died. The phone died.
Ah,
Yeah.
I gotcha. I died as he. So this DeMello, Yeah, so the thing that came to mind there is like, I don't know I want to communicate this right, but so when you have an injury, you can, for example, you may need a wheelchair and you may need crutches. And when you heal, and this does happen, when you heal, you eventually no longer need a wheelchair or crutches.
Mhm.
Sometimes you may need wheelchair and crutches, for the rest of your life. Maybe new technology comes along and it changes things, but new medicine. So there's that part of it. So when I hear Chad talking about going out and doing good work and doing service, um, what concerns me there is like it's a. I would go to cannabis, or something like that, and um, it would
I,
provide something for me.
I
And
can understand why.
yeah, it's
I had a friend who would go to Kratom. Yeah.
there's so yeah, in a way, you can do things that help you feel good, and then when you're not doing those things, I think they call it the hedonic. There's some type of hedonic response. There's these pleasure centers in the brain, and when you're not, yeah, when you're not doing that thing that brings the pleasure, you'll end up having those pleasure chemicals decrease, and then you'll have feelings of low, and that's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing to get your fix, there's so many things you can do to get your fix, to get your pleasure. So it's not there's, and then you could imagine, well, where do you want to be? And so the mellow is talking about the fact that we humans have the ability to get to a point where we have joy, where we can experience joy, um, um, that it's available to us just all the time. Um, and so obviously we can't get there. It's like we'll have work to do to get there, but it'd be nice to imagine that that's where we want to get eventually. And then, like, we still want, I think it's good to do good work, but it would be good that when we're not doing good work, we have joy, and that when we are doing the good work, we have joy, right? But at both times. So it's not the work that we're doing that gives us the joy, but we're having joy. We're having joy, um, even when we're resting, right? Because
There's
we need to rest sometimes, you
there's
know.
a balance to contentment versus hope into the future. So if you hope into the future, you're going to want to look forward to something, and anticipation brings us joy, because when we're anticipating something that's ahead of us, we go, well, yeah, that, because, and then it's strange that sometimes the fulfillment of said participated thing, I'll use something drastic, an orgasm. Um, After that, is it the most joyful, or is that the part where it completely dies down? It's there's this expectation, but you find that there's this book called The Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment, where you're balancing out your contentment versus your hope in the future. And I think the best way you could do that is just trust God and try to walk according to the Spirit and be content with what you have in front of you, and yet also be able to be content with what your performance is concerning your hopes, and shoot for reasonable hopes.
So, yeah, if, for example, sex is at the center of my marriage and it's not God, then if I become a paraplegic, then that's not going to be good for my marriage.
No.
Right. So that's yeah, when we become attached to these things, which end up, we get the pleasure when we have those things, um, all of a sudden that can be taken away from you. Right. If you need your arms and your legs to have your joy, to have your that satisfaction, then it can be taken away from you. So
But
it
it's
would be nice to have the joy even without having mobility in your legs and hands.
but I do think God does give us gifts. So,
Yeah.
sex with your wife is a good thing. And that there are people who, again, it's like a case where if something is taken too far, like it becomes a drug, it becomes like a dopamine chase where you're deprived. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to push back just a little and say, fellowship with my wife can be better, and it can be more sustainable. The sex.
I view both as fellowship, but just, yeah.
Well, it's good and it's a gift. I agree with you there, but I just wanted to point out, like, yeah, having a relationship in which there's something more important than the sex, right? There's something more important than raising children. Yeah, trying to put God at the top. That's where I'm aiming in my life, right? And it's a yeah.
Do you feel hopeful? Because that can be hard.
hopeful. I'm almost. This is the whole one person's medicine is another person's poison. It's I might have too much hope, right? So I might have so much hope that I become naive. But yeah, I have no shortage of hope. Like, I have absolutely no shortage of hope.
Well, maybe that's why we get along so well, is because I'm like the total opposite. I feel bottomed out. That's interesting. Maybe we can balance each other out a bit. But yeah.
I believe things like that are collaborating with and complementing each other with our strengths and weaknesses is good.
But with let's see, too much hope. The thing about too much hope is you get to the top of something and then the position that you're in becomes too risky. It becomes unstable. And then you crash down.
What is the top? Like, I'm just like, when you think you're at the top, it could be a delusion. I mean, I don't know what the top is, because it's all just a perspective. It's like perspective and perception of, and there's some idea about, like, if you're at the top, then you're not able to see what would be further and higher up, right? So there's a blind spot there. Like, the idea that you could ever be at the top, I would just kind of question that.
Well,
like, maybe you can always keep going up closer and closer forever, closer and closer to God forever.
You got to think of a Kanye West, he got in an echo chamber surrounded by people who could never question him and supported him in everything he would say. And when you're in that position, it's hard for people to question you because of your status, because he did make so much money, that his position becomes unstable due to the fact that he's not only in an echo chamber, he's also unaware of how everyone else views him. So he's not aware enough of the bottom. He can't see the bottom because he's so nested in this, where it's almost like for a person like that to become stable, they need to find the bottom again.
Well, when you we all have blind spots, and when we miss the mark, there will be pain, suffering, discomfort, and that pain, suffering, discomfort can be informative about us missing the mark. That's how I'd kind of translate what you're saying there.
Yeah, I kind of view it as we're all riding waves, and the waves go up and down. And yeah, it's kind of like surfing. You can get to the top of the wave, you could ride the wave, but the wave eventually does crash, but that doesn't mean that you can't get onto another wave. Huh?
You might be able to, yeah, I guess. Yeah, you could try to play games, but maybe that's not such a good thing to play those games. There might just need to be. I mean, the thing is we can. I believe we can know God better. We can serve God better, and just because we can doesn't mean we will.
Yeah.
And we also, I'm not sure we should be casting judgment on people's willingness to serve God. Just all over the place, casting that judgment. And then there's how far will you fall and how far will you rise? There is I guess it would be nice to try to give that to God because sometimes the falls can make you tough, and the prayer would be that you don't have too much put on you that you can't handle. And
Yeah.
so there's some people who are struggling with a lot of things, and it would be nice if those struggles help make those people who are struggling, help make them people who become better because of it and are able to do better work because of it. And yeah, I don't envy the struggles that people go through. But yeah, there's a lot of people struggling.
I've always struggled because I do have a fear of success, because it's like I can see how being a millionaire would cause lots of, well, first off, it causes lots of people to become blindsided by whether it be greed or ambition. And the other thing is I struggle against my own either deflated incapability of seeing where I put myself too low, as Chad said. That can be just as bad because you're too deflating of other people, because you're not really seeing, you're not really in this sort of relationship where you're properly humble. Like, you need to be confident enough to be able to engage with a person to be humble. It's a strange paradox, but I think it's true. It's like there's relationships where people are too snapped apart,
Disconnected.
Yeah.
That would be like the quality of the fellowship is very small. And you were talking about waves earlier, and so like when you're aiming, at a target, something you can miss in a lot of different directions. You can miss the mark in a lot of different directions, and so you I think you can have too much humility and you can have too little humility.
I say just kind of take it one day at a time and do your best to trust that God's got most of all of the symphony in his hands. I mean, that at least seems to be the thing for me, because if I can trust in God concerning the authority over all the mistakes, even though I make a mistake, even though I fall down on my ass completely, I still have nothing to fear, because, well, that was in the cards, and I'll still be helping somebody out. Yeah.
It's nice to have support, though.
Yeah, it certainly is.
And I remember you talking about your church, it being, and what it sounded like your church is a place where people can be supportive and find support. Like
Certainly.
one of the really good things about a church. So
Yeah. Though I've had trouble myself. I mean, I've been sitting in their church, and it's not to say that, I mean, you're going to find sick people in the church too, but you're going to find, but it gives you some understanding of yourself too, and the things that you need, because you're a body of people. You get to know what other people's struggles are. That's kind of like what's happening here in this randos community, is you're seeing relationships, and I think relationships are very vital. Yeah, talking to people. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Do they? I think we may have talked about it, but at your church, do they have small groups where you get together with small groups and?
Mm-hmm. I play Dungeons and Dragons.
I was about to ask that. Dungeons and Dragons. You have a small group that does Dungeons and Dragons. That's cool. I have a buddy who, there was a small group that did jujitsu. I went to their website. They had a small group that did mountain biking. But yeah, small groups that would be more attractive to me than like going into like this place where everyone is, listening to the pastor. But those small groups, man, I think that's where you can connect with people more.
Well, I mean, I guess it comes from the sort of traditional framework that's been around for many years, and I don't know about the wisdom of it, because I mean, you do have other Christian groups that try to be a bit more individual like that, but the trouble is you get into small groups, and then the groups divide, and they argue over stuff. And there has been Christian groups that are Christian cults that have done just terrible things, just like terrible people. It's like, oh, so it can go south really bad. So I think there's a good reason for institution to a certain extent.
That's the giving authority to this thing outside of yourself. And then the question would be, is it a giving of authority to God? Right? How much is God included in that giving of the authority?
I think Paul the Apostle said, submit yourself to all authorities, knowing that God has put them where they are.
Okay.
And he submitted himself to Nero, even though Nero chopped his head off. So, I mean,
and then you had mentioned the Hitler earlier.
Yeah. I mean, there can be a bad bad side to it, but
I'm not sure that. Yeah, I guess the question is like, do we give authority to Paul? Right. So I know that, like, I agree with loving God, loving your neighbor, loving your enemies. I agree with trying to cultivate a relationship, a good fellowship with God, neighbors, even the enemies, and like that all means something. And there's skills that we can learn. Like when those small groups end up having arguments and disagreements, there are skills we can learn to deal with those
hopefully,
situations.
hopefully, yeah.
Well, that's where I might have more faith. I might have more hope. But yeah, I think there are skills that we can learn.
Well, we've got new technology, so you know what
Well-
systems did exist and worked in the past may not work now. So I mean,
But
church is always reforming. So yeah.
but there are skills that I think are they're. I don't know how much the technology. Like I think the technology can help making scale, and there's trade-offs when you do that. But there's in general, when you have a disagreement, you're going to
Go on Twitter.
well, you're going to have like some type of a relationship with. There will be maybe some number of people entering into a relationship with each other in which there is a disagreement. And say, okay, and then there will be the potential for use of force. And then there's a whole bunch of strategies you can use. And then, like, one of these strategies is Jordan Peterson talks about minimum necessary force and his 12 rules for life. So, communicating with words is a way to, which might be less force than communicating with like fists or weapons.
Well, sometimes the fists actually. Yeah, the fist can save you sometimes from many words, but
But as soon as the force escalates to fists, then all of a sudden there's
yeah,
it's an invitation for everyone else in that interaction to participate with fists, and then
yeah,
and there was an invitation for escalation, so it can escalate even further beyond fists. But if it stays in the realm of trying to communicate with language, there's all kinds of ways to communicate. Kara Nodrick talked about, I think, focused on the nonviolent communication for a while.
yeah, for a very long time, yeah.
Another technique is to ask the person like questions like, how do you want to deal with this situation? What do we do? What would you suggest that we do next?
Yeah. I find that I try to be more I've over time, because I used to, was it when you had the Atheism Plus come around, and I was a Christian then, and I would use debating techniques and stuff like Greg Bonson and presuppositional apologetics, but I just felt like arguing led to hostility, and I didn't want hostility. I wanted people to sort of, I wanted more communication, wanted to actually discuss a topic. And I don't think people can do that when they're all riled up about either cynicism or anger or frustration.
Well, if you have two people and one of them wants to argue, there is no argument unless the other person engages in it as well. Like, you won't have an argument unless there's like at least two people who are like agreeing to argue.
True.
So like, if you, I mean, yeah, don't like there. I guess the question: why would you ever argue? And who like? But there's a, and then you can argue too much, and you do it at the wrong time. Maybe you don't have good skill at it. Maybe you're doing it with people who don't have good skill at it. Maybe there's no point to the argument. Like, there's no agenda with the argument. Like, what's going to come out of this argument? What do we want to come out of the argument? Like, the whole context of it. People can just get into this argument and without even like first just saying like, why are we going to argue? What's the point? Why are we arguing? So sometimes arguing, there can be a point and a reason to do it. And then a lot of arguments, people just kind of get compelled to argue. And it's almost like a lack of awareness.
I find that arguing is usually more psychological than it is, about trying to get to a point. Or people are so focused on the win that there's no way. Yeah.
Violent IQ. And that's and I've been there. Yeah.
And it always feels stupid after I get out of it. It's like, why did I do that? Yeah, I see this estuary community as, bridging the meanings. It's hopefully leading towards a direction where people are less arguing. Seems to be that case. Though you do have kind of like celebrity statuses for people where you can clearly tell they're trying to go up hierarchies. But yeah, I prefer just trying to be honest. And honest it can be difficult because you're opening yourself up. Yeah.
Yeah, I like honesty. I am also learning to appreciate secrets as well. So I'm not I'm not a fan. I don't think that complete transparency is good either.
I think you're right there too. Yeah. Was it Jordan Peterson talked about like constantly being honest, but I also think that secrets sort of keep people engaged. And
Jordan Peterson said, "At least do not lie."
Yeah. At least don't lie.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have to open your mouth about everything that's wrong concerning your personal life. Yeah. Like I have. But
well, a lot of times when people are arguing, people are sharing, you really can get a glimpse at that person. Like they were like, every time you open your mouth, you're revealing something, especially if you're being honest, right? And if you're not, you are potentially you're creating potential opportunities for people to see your dishonesty, even the dishonesty you might not be aware of. I see that too. I see the hypocrisies and contradictions that a lot of people do and say. Like, so when Jordan Peterson says to tell the truth or at least don't lie, that actually takes a lot of work because we'll do it accidentally and subconsciously. That's where it's not to be in an echo chamber.
I think that can also be taken to extremes where people can try too hard not to lie. Because, I mean, if you open yourself up to consciousness too much, then you're like you're like an ant under a magnifying glass. You're going to burn yourself. So there's a certain degree of give or take. Yeah.
Well, there's the fellowship with people part, and so like there's some things I don't want to introduce to my children yet, right? So there's but I think we're all like children, and there's some things we're not ready for yet as individuals and groups.
My opinion, this is a training ground for eternity. So,
No, it's definitely that. I think you're right.
it's hard to grasp eternity. Yeah, that's a big one. I still have trouble.
Well, we're all like we're all on a path, a unique path, like at different points on our paths, and they're unique, they're different. So I made a lot of mistakes, and just because of my lack of care for other people, I would just end up assuming all kinds of things, like basically projecting myself onto others. So yeah, there's a lot of differences. And if I'm projecting myself onto others, I'll create stumbling blocks for people, make life hard for myself and for other people.
Yeah, because you set tasks for people out there and they're either incapable of taking them on. Yeah. That'll definitely cause a stumbling block, especially from a leadership position.
There's I do think we have a leadership problem in our world. We don't have great leaders. Chad pointed at Paul Vanderklay as being some kind of a leader, and I think he's more of a teacher and he's more of a pastor. But
Yeah.
I don't know if teachers and pastors are the same thing as rulers and judges. Right?
No, they're not supposed to be. Well,
Yeah.
they do judge, but yeah.
Well, the thing is about judging is this thing about guilt. Like a judge in a justice system will basically assign guilt to people, something like that. And so, does a pastor or should a pastor do that? Should a Christian do that?
They don't do that individually. They'll go to their elders and disperse the responsibility, but there is excommunication when somebody is too unruly. Like, yeah. So there is, yeah.
So then there's some kind of a judge, and then there's some way in which people become judges,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's some process like by which those judges are
What
put
is
into their position.
the concept is called the keys of Peter. Whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth is loosed in heaven. And that's supposed to be a significant, that's the way the rest of the church sees it, is that's what excommunication and being a part of the body. But, I mean, you've got things like the Protestant Revolution, where basically Martin Luther is completely excommunicated, and yet there's a splinter of people who see that there's something wrong with the current body, which happens to be an institution. So we've, in the church, described the Catholic Church as the universal church, but we consider it like an invisible body as opposed to an institution. So there's this invisible church and there's a visible church, and the visible church is an institution like a Presbyterian church or PCUSA, URC, whereas the invisible body could be anyone, could be you, could be me, could be anybody in the church. So, yeah.
Yeah, my point was that we're not very good at selecting good leaders. And so I guess that point would be selecting elders, selecting the head, selecting the decision-making bodies.
Well, it's not easy. Not easy to select leaders. Yeah.
Well, I've got a book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Maybe this should be some reading for elders, people who want to be leaders. But yeah, that's what I'm interested in, trying to find good leaders, great leaders, and trying to be a better leader. Like, I'm not a great leader, but I want to be a better one because, I am a husband and father and coworker and neighbor. And if I'm a better leader, that would be good. By definition, that would be good.
Well, learning what sort of frames there are from, like, what is it? There's this parable that says the king who plows in the field is going to be a very wise king. In other words, a king that goes down and understands the frame of reference of the farmer, understands from the bottom up the whole strata of what's under him. So
yeah, there's also this the influence of media. So you mentioned Ye, and in this book the author mentions George Bush, and then the media is able to shape people's perspectives. And now we have media we have things that's more distributed, where, like, you could end up with part of agencies, which are infiltrating, distributed media platforms and shaping people's perspectives. And so you can end up with leaders who would go and know the frame of the citizens. But they could be portrayed or cast by media or by agents who want to corrupt systems and destroy and prevent competition, serving all kinds of things other than God. They can cast the anointed rulers and judges. They can cast them however they want. So we're dealing with that. That's the world we're in.
It's a very complex problem, yeah. And then AI on top of it. It's like, yeah. I don't know. I just pray for people and pray for the future. Because I think that what we're doing with, what's being done in the randos community and what's being done with trying to get people to communicate more and more, see other people, talk to other people, I think you'll have better leadership that emerges from that. Because, if you, instead of trying to see yourself as the leader, creating the conditions for consistently good leadership will help arise a good leader.
What does that look like?
Harmony.
But is that a training ground? Like, what is a training ground for leaders to become better leaders?
Well, that's the full range of life, I think. I mean, it's hard to sort of pinpoint it. I mean, there's certainly going to be materials that you can read that will help you, and but if you try to shoot for perfection, obviously, I think we're going to miss the mark that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just having a reasonably balanced leader who's not simply low status, but understands the high status and the low status, and understands the framework of what it's like to be in this position and that position and that position. I guess somebody who's the one who's most aware, the one whose attention is on everything, which can be very hard because the internet is filled with ways for us to put our attention on things that, what do we actually should be paying attention to? Yeah.
It would be nice to be able to discern. Like a leader should be able to discern people's strengths and weaknesses and encourage them honestly about their strengths. Be able to provide a vision for these people so that the word follower followers would have something to aim for, and then would become self-directed.
That's usually the idea. You want to be able to embody the way in which people can be self-directed within the strata of your leadership. So if, let's say you're leading a group of people who knit sweaters, well, then you should be well versed in not only how to knit sweaters in the best way, but you should also be versed in the way of what it's like to come in blindsided and not know how to knit a sweater and be able to communicate to that person how to knit a sweater. Yeah.
So you're talking about some type of competence with regard to, in this case, knitting sweaters, but also competence in being able to encourage people to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's quite a few skills that a good leader needs. So,
Yeah, it's
uh,
a pretty difficult job.
it would be nice to be trustworthy, right? I think that would be really important, is to be trustworthy. So when you say you're going to do something, you do it.
Yeah,
That would be nice.
I'm terrible at that. um, but yeah, yeah, trustworthiness is definitely is a thing. One thing I'll be honest, I'm honest about it, but am I trustworthy? Uh, let's see. Am I actually being honest when I don't live up to my own trustworthy? Is that? Yeah, I mean, it seems like a blind side there, but um, uh, I I generally think that if you can understand things from different frames of reference, then that will help you in leadership. But I mean, I don't see anybody's going to be a perfect leader other than God. But
You're going to have blind spots like everyone else.
mhm,
Even the best leaders are going to have blind spots. And so, to that point about yay, it's like you don't want to be in an echo chamber. You want to
yeah,
be able to uh, surround yourself with people who are going to help you see what was in your blind spots. And you're going to want to be the kind of person who values those people and the feedback they give, and encourages them to continue doing that, and is able to um, receive that feedback, and they would see results. Um,
yeah.
the kind of leader who, yeah, when you come to the office, people aren't scared. They actually are um, are happy to have the leader there.
Well, I
All
think
kinds all kinds of skills.
I think sometimes no, what is it? You have this case where grunts in the field, oftentimes, like let's say a lieutenant, because my dad's named after somebody. My grandfather had a friend who was a lieutenant, um, and my grandfather was lower than. Was it? Do you want an expert who can knit be the leader of the group, or a leader who can't knit be the leader? Um, well, somebody who understands what it's like to not knit, and at the same time understands how to knit. Someone who can understand the paradox of both.
I think it
The,
depends on the size of your group as well.
so it's like having sometimes the private in the army who's been in the battlefield for a very long time, and a lieutenant who shows up. The lieutenant, though he outranks the private in that situation, that private is going to know how to survive and dodge bullets, and lieutenant's going to put his trust in what that private has to say more so than anything else. Um, so experience is definitely relevant.
Yeah.
And that's what Ye was kind of missing, is the experience of being at the bottom. And that's perhaps why he's currently in the position he's in. Maybe to learn how to come out of it too.
I know media shapes our perspective of what's going on. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, nobody's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. No perfect leaders either. So you can go out there and still be a leader even if you're not perfect. Just try. It's kind of like, I
Well,
mean,
you have to value people. You have to try to be trustworthy. You have to try to have competence. You need to be competent. That has to do with your knowledge and your skills. You need to try to have communication skills. You need to be able to learn. You need to be able to, admit when you're wrong, and show appreciation towards people who are trying to help you see your blind spots.
yeah.
I mean, these are all things that we can all work on.
But
Each
there
one of
is,
those go really deep as well. Like that's just like kind of an overview. Each one of those go really deep.
there's this parable about if the axe is sharp, then use more strength. Meaning, it's no good. You're not going to chop down a tree by constantly sharpening your axe. At some point, you got to swing the axe and cut down the tree. And
I've never sharpened an axe, and I've never cut down a tree with an axe. Just to put that out there.
And I think sometimes leadership, like you see in the military, is, sometimes it's unforgiving. Sometimes they ask people, people talk about military intelligence being an oxymoron because, they make dumb decisions and they get a lot of people killed, and it happens a lot. But they can't apologize for whatever decisions they make, whether they be bad decisions or not. And we can refine that system so we would make less bad decisions, but that
Why
refinement
can't they
process.
apologize?
Huh?
Why
Well,
can't they apologize?
because at some point the structure itself breaks down. People don't. If people don't have respect for the general, then the whole edifice crashes.
Right.
You don't have an army.
Right. It'd be nice to build a new boat while keeping the one that we have afloat.
Yeah.
But people aren't. Yeah. So it would be nice to build a new boat. There's a bunch of them too. There's a bunch of boats, including the military and the government and cities and education systems, justice systems, companies, all
I'm
kinds of.
mostly scared of the 3-letter agencies at this point. But we'll see.
I think they're hyper focused on threats, and so I do wonder, like, for example, why media would attempt to inflame racial tensions, right? And I don't know if there's 3-lettered government agencies behind that. I don't know if it's money. I don't know if it's power. Maybe it's all three. I don't know why the media does what the media does, but they definitely shape people's perspectives. They're powerful.
Yeah. Well, you could go into conspiracy theories, but George Soros, whatever. They all have their plans concerning whatever, but
I'm curious what we would do about it. That's what I'm curious. So,
I think what we're doing is the right thing, and that is talking. Trying to
That's
Trying
better.
to-
That's better than not talking.
breaking down those barriers, and especially talking to people who we don't want to let in the conversation. The better we are at opening ourselves up to talking to those people who are, let's say, feeling like they are disenfranchised, and trying to get them in a place where they're not riled up and there can be cross communication.
What about people who want to dominate the conversation?
That's well, everybody's going to want to dominate the conversation, but you can dominate a conversation by being submissive in a conversation. It may not dawn on the other person that you're offering them little tidbits of ways in which you're helping that person in a way that will allow them to see a bigger frame of reference. But it certainly takes a lot of work, because you can topple down whole systems by being submissive in certain cases.
Do you have
Kinda
an
like-
example of that?
Well, guerrilla warfare, maybe. Like,
It's not very submissive.
it's not too submissive, no, but it is an example of people who are putting themselves in the ground in order to avoid this giant system, where you have this giant system that's constantly trying to attack, but because it cannot locate all of these pockets, all these little places, that they wind up wasting their resources and their time and their energy to the point where they lose the battle, not so much because of their technology. They lose the battle because they won't come down to the status of the people who are fighting in the woods and in the jungles, because their enemy is too proud. Yeah.
There's confrontation then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know how to do the confrontation, especially with people who are, attempting to dominate a conversation, who are like, you end up with people who are lying and deceiving. They're seeking after, status or power or money, and basically motivated in that direction. And you can, like, there's contradictions, hypocrisies, there's all kinds of things that can be pointed out. There can be confrontation on all of that. But I don't know how it gets done in a good way. Like, I guess what I'm pointing out is that there are, nobody's perfect. That means that everyone, including people in this little corner, including everyone, is doing it, is making mistakes. Everyone could be confronted.
Yeah.
Right.
We all sort of hit our stars imperfectly a little bit. So, yeah. Yeah, it's, what is it? Martin Luther quote. It says, "This life is not perfection, but the training in perfection. This is not this life is not righteousness, but training in righteousness. This life is not um, good, but training in good. All does not gleam and glitter as of yet, but it's becoming that which it will be. So I guess
That is a view. That's one view, right?
just try to be the person who can refine the process the best, I guess. All right. Well, I think I'm gonna dip out here.
All
I
right.
hope I'm thankful for the conversation.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you joined and hopped in.
All right. Take care, man.
Take care. I've got about 30 more minutes, maybe 25, if anyone else wants to hop in. I think it's a humble view. Chad says, thank you, Matt. This humble view. There are people who go on the internet and teach and try to teach, and so yeah, can you be humble and be trying to teach? Seems like there's a tension, and then you have many people trying to teach, and then they will disagree. And then is it the most popular that are the best teachers? And what does best even mean? So in this book, 21 Irrefutable Laws, there was a mention of George Bush. And after 9/11, Bush went to New York. And someone in the crowd said, "We can't hear you." And Bush said, "I can hear you, and the people who did this are going to hear from us." And so there was a skill at speaking to the spirit of all the people. And I'm not even going to say it's a good spirit. Like maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. And so George Bush spoke to the spirit, and the media portrayed it a certain way. So he had the support of the media as well. And it's like, that's where the popularity comes from. The popularity comes from being able to speak to the spirit of the people. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can then lead those people. Hello. I have about 20 more minutes if you wanted to hop in. It's like, why do people create these? I'm scrolling through like YouTube subscriptions, and people pick topics, and maybe sometimes the topics pick them. Back in the days of Bush, there wasn't a swamp yet. The swamp. I don't know about that. I never come outside of the chat. I don't know if you're being serious or not. Like, I think there was a swamp in fake media. This is the swamp in fake media is something that's existed as long as human history has existed. That's my take, my hot take. Yeah, and then try to describe to me what a government and media would look like if it wasn't fake and it wasn't a swamp. It's like, man, it'd be hard pressed to create one because we're not perfect. We could try to create the best we've ever seen and do better than anything we've seen, but it would still have its flaws. Yeah, so I haven't been paying attention to Paul Vanderklay recently. And it's like, what motivates Paul to talk about these things? Checked out Grim Grizz the other day. What motivates Grim Grizz? What are the spirits? Are they Holy Spirits? Are they the spirit of the YouTube algorithm? Or the mainstream media? Or any number of spirits? True, Gavin, but nowadays people are aware of it. There were people aware of it back then. Probably some percentage or proportion. I think nowadays we can connect with people who are aware of it. That's what's different now. It's more easy to connect with people who have a shared interest, especially if you're on the fringe. And so, yeah, the fringe can connect with each other like never before. Dr. Lenny Time. Anyway, I am from the Netherlands, so you guys figure it out yourselves. I don't know what that means. Figure it out yourselves. Sounds like something. It didn't sound bad. Figure it out. Self-directed. Yeah, I suspect that there's the unholy spirits are motivating, animating inspiring, aspiring, many people, most of the time. That's what I suspect. And then people who play status games, people who do idolatry, can develop a skill at like navigating those spirits, those unholy spirits, in order to get really powerful and wealthy. And some people have better skill at it than others. And so when you see popularity, you're seeing something like that. You're seeing people tap into a spirit, some type of a zeitgeist, or I forget this other word that was used in this little corner recently. Sometimes the teacher can't be a leader. Here's my notes, some of my notes. Pace then lead can be dangerous. The leader is using beliefs. Leaders after 9/11 were not righteous. It is dangerous to lead people who are not righteous. It is dangerous to give authority to people who are not righteous. So this whole righteousness thing that I'm writing about here is like, it can come off as binary, like you either are or you are not, but the language can confuse you there because it's like a spectrum, never-ending spectrum. A good team is led by the most righteous and supported by the most talented leaders. The righteous should be the head. The head is hidden and has secrets. When the body is corrupted, it is not in fellowship with the head. Pain is felt, and the head must be connected to the body to address and attend to pain. The corrupted head merely acts and pretends. It is an imposter, with impersonators acting as a substitute for the ideal head. I put those notes at the front of this book, because this book is about leadership, and Maxwell, it's like Maxwell talks about things that are true whether you're righteous or not. There's a lot of knowledge like that where you can learn things. It doesn't matter if you're doing it for good or not, no matter what you're aiming for. I may have missed something in the comments there. I saw this, anyway, I'm from the Netherlands, and then I saw, in my honest opinion, and then a correction. Yeah, I feel like I missed a message there. But I might go prep for my meeting. A weekly meeting with Amazon. People at Amazon, I should say. Yeah, the thing I've been going through today is quality versus quantity. You had 2 comments in between. I missed those. I might have to pull this up on Randos to see what you said. Some kind of bug on this StreamYard. Gavin was here. There we go. YouTube is censoring. Yeah, it's not StreamYard, it's YouTube censoring. You said something? Maybe it's YouTube. I'm not seeing it in the live chat either. that stinks when your work is censored by the tools. But yeah, quality versus quantity. That's a theme, like a never-ending theme that we can study in life, is to, appreciate quality. So, well, it doesn't look like anyone wants to hop in. I've got 5 or 6 minutes left, but I'm gonna go make coffee, maybe grab a snack, and I hope you guys and gals, everyone, have a day filled with the thing that you need. I hope you have a day filled with the thing that you need. So, until next time, bye-bye.